Welcome on my first step ever. As I say, there is always a lot of hard work and a lot of unseen things that goes behind the scenes to take your first step because that is the hardest. And we often never, maybe actually, we don't really understand that how important those steps are unless we actually can see that through someone else's story who has been there, has done that. And please join me in welcoming Katy Andrews, all the way from Sri Lanka today. Hi, Katy. Welcome on my first step ever.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on your show. So thank you.
I like to share a little bit more about Katy before we begin, and you will be in surprised to kind of go through her story and really understand the bits and pieces of what made her create the life of her own, of her choice, of her dreams, and of her own likings, and what really goes behind doing that, if this is what you also are wanting to do for yourself. So Katy, we are talking with Katy Andrews, and she's a coach and a globetrotter who's been traveling the world since 2022, living her dreams while helping others do the same. So, Katie's unique perspective as an INFJ resonates with empaths and advocates. So, we are going to delve a bit into that to understand what that really is all about. And she's overcome toxic workplaces, tough relationships, and serious procrastination to find her voice and confidence. With a decade of corporate HR and coaching experience, Katie is adept at guiding people through stress, layoffs, and confidence crisis. And I'm sure lot of us go through those difficult things at difficult phases of time even while you're hearing this particular podcast. So this might be a sign or maybe a place where you are at the point in time where you can maybe see some help over here. And now her mission is to help you conquer your challenges and pursue your goals. So join us as we chat with Katy Andrews about gaining confidence, fighting procrastination, and taking control of your life. So, Katy, let's begin with the very, very first question. And it's very important to understand the foundation of someone before we even go and understand what were the first steps that they took towards their successful career or journey that they consider success as. Please take us through, how was the circumstances while you were growing up? How did that shape you? We would love to know that.
So, in a nutshell, I have had a really good life. If I reflect on my life, I'm very sort of lucky and privileged to be here and, sort of waking up every day and having a chance at life is a blessing. And that's not something that I used to always think about. I used to kind of almost like take life for granted, if you will. And it's my life circumstances and the challenges and everything that I've gone through that's made me who I am today, and really building on that awareness. And we'll talk about that later. But ultimately, if I go back to my childhood, I didn't have a bad childhood. I had a loving mother. I was an only child. She would give me everything that she could. She would work extra hours to give me the things that I wanted. And I probably in some ways took that for granted at the time, being an only child, but now looking back, I see, I kind of admire what she did for me. So I had a good, an upbringing in that sense. Um, Unfortunately, there were some sort of downsides to the childhood, if you will, because, I had family and people in school that bullied me, and that did bring my self-esteem down a lot, my confidence down a lot. I believe that it added to the procrastination and perfectionism and thinking that I'm not worthy. So there's a lot of things like that that went on, and I would sort of shy myself away from a lot of situations for the fear of being treated differently and stuff like that. My father also unfortunately walked out on us when I was 17. So that was quite challenging at the time. And again, I used to blame myself for that. What have I done wrong? Do I need to do something different? You could probably see where the procrastination or, started to rear its ugly head. But again, looking back now at my life, whilst those situations were tough, it doesn't define me. It's just something that's happened through my life, challenges that I've had to work through and kind of process, so focus on self-love and things like that, to go, actually, there were situations that happened for me rather than to me. What can I learn from? And, it's only through these life challenges and, even down to sort of middle of my life and going from job to job because I wasn't, happy and always seeking for a better job and something that's going to tick all the boxes and stuff like that, which we know doesn't exist. That perfect job, whilst you might get really close, it doesn't exist. There's always going to be something nitty gritty that falls down. And, I guess, like, fast forward today, we travel in the world for the last 2 years. That's given me a lot of time, as well as coaching people to really think about everything that I've been through, to really reflect and go, do you know what? Life wasn't as bad as what I probably thought it was at the time, and look at the strength and the resilience that I've actually got from it, and look at how I can utilize this to help other people so that people can go, well, actually, yeah, whilst Katie's not been through exactly what I've been through, she's been through a lot of hurdles and challenges. And I think a lot of people find that motivating, that they can eventually get through their hurdles and achieve what they want. So, yeah, in a nutshell, it's been a bumpy ride at times, lots of ups and downs and everything in between. But ultimately, it's been a good life, and it's been, I can see now the strength in my character that I didn't have like nearly 40 years ago when I was born, if you will. So yeah, that's kind of my journey, really, if you will.
Wow, thank you so much for taking us through that amazing journey of yours from the beginning to where you are today. And that was a very, very in depth, yet a very uh, sort of an overview that you have given us, from where you come from in terms of mindset and what you really had to kind of struggle with, the challenges in the sense of your mind speaking to you, what you thought about yourself, to actually kind of changing that narrative for you, and now the kind of place that you're in mentally peaceful. We will now kind of, I would love to kind of go back to that certain phase of your life where you were still having that, maybe let's say early 20s, that internal dialogue of not being good enough, or you kind of beating yourself up for everything that's going around in your environment, and not being able to get out of that. I want to pause at this particular phase in your life and understand from the point of view of the Katie then, because I think at this point in time, I really am excited to know, that you are able to reflect on the situations, and then you're able to gain something out of that. But for a lot of our listeners who are maybe in their, late teens or early 20s, they are yet to kind of live their own journey to reflect and understand what that was. So I would love to listen to Katie at her early 20s, that even though all these mental challenges that she was facing through, how was it for her, and what did she try, if she did, to come out of it, and did it work, or how was things for you around that time?
So going back to my 20s, it was a positive time. There was lots of going out with friends and stuff, like, in the 20s should be, sort of enjoying that element of life. But the not so good side of it was I was in quite a controlling relationship at the time. And it got to the point within a 10-year span of my 20s, which I did eventually break off from that relationship by the time I was in the 30s, where again that sort of self-doubt came in, low confidence, self-esteem, and those sort of niggly things that have been up and down in my life up until that point. And the trouble is with a controlling relationship that, there's different levels of it, and this one was so subtle over time, slowly chipping away at my self-esteem, that I couldn't see it. And listeners that can maybe resonate with this can resonate with this. Little comments and little remarks and little things, and I didn't really see it. And they say sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees. Sometimes you need to be an outsider looking in to kind of see these things. Then towards the end of the relationship, it did get to the point where I was like, oh, actually, this is not right anymore. Like, the gut instinct started to come in, which is a fantastic tool, and was saying, oh, you should really do something here. You should really get out and, leave him and this, that, and the other. But again, sometimes you've got that sort of battle of listening to your gut and taking that first step, because that first step can be the hardest thing. What will happen? And the thing is with our mind is it can be our greatest asset and our worst enemy at times, trying to protect us and stuff like that. And it would often say to me, oh, things will change, stay and see it out, when actually that protection, if you will, was actually crippling me even more. And, I started detaching myself from family and friends and just got more and more withdrawn, if you will. And it only got to the point where he found someone else, luckily, that I was kind of forced out of that situation, luckily. And again, at the time, I was sort of in two minds, always left me, oh, well, actually, is this a blessing? When actually looking back now, I was like, that needed to happen. Now, don't get me wrong, everything that happens in our life is for a reason, and I'm sure he came into my life for a reason, to test me, to challenge me, to make me focus on self-love and realize all the things that I need to realize, to focus on me and to kind of be happy with me and confident. So yeah, the 20s was a bit of a mixed one. It was going through that second love, if you will, because they always say you have three loves in your life, apparently. The first one is like an infatuation, the second one is to test you, and the third one is meant to be like the forever one. So this one was like the second one, the really, really challenging one. But yeah, ultimately in my 20s, I was like, yeah, still a bit naive, still had a lot of lessons to learn, went through that sort of crippling situation. And yeah, I just sort of went into a bit of a shell of myself again. So yeah, there's no real sort of happy times there. It was a challenge, if you will.
I hear you, and hear you, Katie, and somewhere I can definitely relate with you
Yeah.
from a lot of perspective that you have shared, and everyone who's listening to us today, our listeners, whether whichever age group they are in, I am 100% sure that they have definitely gone through something like this, or maybe they might, come across something like this in the future. I hope not, but this is all, as you very rightly put, a part of learning. It's very nice that you identify it as, that everyone comes in your life for a reason, and that was a situation that was putting you up to test. And in our 20s, we are either, worrying about a career, or worrying about a love life, worrying about a future, because it's also a time when we are very uncertain about who we are, what do we want, what what sort of a life I want to live, because you are kind of growing out of your parents' shelter, or the kind of culture that you're coming from, that shelter. If you're traveling to a new country, if you're even changing cities, you're meeting new people, your perspective is broadening, or maybe you're unlearning something and then relearning things. It is a very exciting, challenging sort of a time for us. So Katie, for you, from there, when you were really dealing with all these emotions, mentally challenging yourself with so many difficult, I mean, there's no other word to put aside from just saying it. Really takes away a lot from us. It just takes away the confidence that we have, as you said, the self-esteem. From then, what really changed, or what was that help that you got, or something that you are seeking out for that came to your way? How did you really start turning your narrative in your head?
It was almost like the flick of a switch, luckily. So when I did break up with the partner, I did have to go back home to the parents very, very briefly, which was a whole different ball game of, taking over your parents' house and stuff and trying to live with them again when you've, learned how to live as an adult and live separately. So that was a challenge. And luckily I wasn't with my mum very long before I eventually moved out. But essentially I was back with my mum a couple of weeks, and something inside of me just said, Mum, I think I want to take myself out tonight. I was working at the time, and I was like, I just really fancy just going to like a comedy night on my own. This was like totally random. I was like, I just need a laugh. I just need to unwind. I just need something. There was just something telling me I needed this. So I went out midweek, which is really unheard of for me. I normally work 9 to 5 at the time, and then just come home and sleep and rinse and repeat. So yeah, I was called to do this, and then I went to this comedy night and got chatting to the group that was there, and there was a particularly friendly man there. he liked a bit of banter and we were chatting and stuff like that. And we had a really great night, but I left early because I was like, oh, I got work the next morning. So before it finished, I kind of got off. And then out of the blue, I got a random message from that same guy. Just kind of chatting, nothing major, just kind of getting to know one another. And then the following week, there was another night out because it was like on this app called Meetup. I don't know if anybody knows it. It's like a worldwide app called Meetup. So this time I invited my mum and her partner. It was a casino night. So I thought, oh, I'll go along to this casino. I'm quite enjoying this new me of getting out and doing the things that I didn't necessarily do much in the relationship. I'm going to get out there. So we went to this comedy night, and without this being prearranged, that person that I met at the comedy night was at the casino night.
Wow.
So he was there again by chance. So again, talking, got to know my mom, and just a really, really nice night. And then he ended up walking us home that night, and then more
Oh,
texting. And then sort of fast forward to today, we got married, and we've been married for the last 7 years. So literally the life just literally flipped on its head, all because I made one decision of, I'm going to go out, I'm going to enjoy myself, I'm going to do something that I don't normally do, but that I'm called to do. Obviously my gut instinct was telling me to do something out of the norm there. And then lo and behold, met someone. Now, some people might say, oh, was it rebound? I don't believe it was, because I wasn't looking and I wasn't rushing anything. It was just something that naturally took its course. It just naturally happened. This person was brought in my life at the right time for the right reason. So I'm a believer in that. So yeah, that's the kind of wisdom I've got. If you're called to do something, a flick of the switch or just something, just kind of go for it and see what happens. Either it's going to pan out or it's going to end up another lesson. But luckily for me, it ended up being like my happy ending, if you will. So yeah.
and a very, very happy new beginning as well. Wow, Katie, that was such a good, I think, phase in your life. I'm sure there are many more such amazing phases are waiting for you in your life. And thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's quite personal, but for kind of taking us through your story from the angle of what you wanted to kind of convey for our listeners. I wanted to highlight that what you just mentioned is, if you have a calling, if you really feel for something, and if you really feel that or maybe I should do this, or maybe I should just try it out, and you feel that intuitively, give it a go.
I could have easily have not listened to that night and taught myself out of it, with the usual self-doubt and, oh no, what do you want to go out for? But no, that time that I listened and challenged the mind and went, no, I'm going to go out. I want to go out. I'm going to go out. And then my life just changed in a nanosecond, and I just did not see that coming. But I'm glad that I did it. So yeah, take a leap, take a risk, and see if it can give you the happy ending that you're looking for.
This is a great hack, talking to yourself in your mind and talking yourself out of that regular situation that you put yourself in. And eh, to everyone who's listening to us, please use this amazing technique, I think, that Katie has just mentioned, that please, 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 sometimes for just once, for one's sake, just do something that you intuitively really feel, but are you feeling a little scared of, and it doesn't need to be really big. So from there, Katie, we see that now you are kind of helping people out there live their own life of dreams while you do living your own. So before we come to that, we would love to know that what happened in between. How did you kind of stumble upon this career of coaching, and what is all about INFJ? Please take us through your story, the behind the scenes of your first step of coaching journey.
Yeah, so I'll talk you through the INFJ. So there's different personality types, and if anybody's interested, there's free, legit personality tests online if you want to sort of really delve into the kind of person you are and who you might connect with. But I've done those tests a couple of times over the years. The first time I was asked to do it was when I worked in human resources. Like, they wanted us to all know our personality type to see how we would work together and stuff like that. And then that was when I first realised I was an INFJ personality type, and that is the more emotional type of personality, if you will, which probably isn't a surprise considering what I've told you so far and the fact that I'm a coach and everything else. And I am the kind of person who's like a Mother Teresa type. So I am the sort of nurturer. I am the person that wants to help you, nurture you, so you can be the best version of yourself, which is really uncanny seeing as though I'm a coach and also an advocate. So basically, I like people to do well. I like people to thrive. I'm very open and honest, a great listener. So those are the traits of an INFJ personality type. And I work well with people of a similar personality type. There are sort of the more leader types, if you will. So I can work with them, but they might not necessarily understand me quite so well because they need a certain type of authoritative kind of speaking. So that's why with leaders, they'll go for things like business coaches, and you'll probably find a lot of business coaches are probably that leader type of personality, I would imagine, rather than the type of personality I've got. Now, that's not going to be in all cases, but it's just I imagine business coach to leader would be a very similar personality type because they need really straight to the point talking with not so much emotion behind it. The more sort of analytical, these stronger personality types.
Yes.
They like facts and figures and stuff like that, come to me with all this evidence kind of thing. So yeah, it's quite interesting to know your personality type. I recommend you do it because it could just give you that insight, into who you are a little bit on a more deeper level. In terms of my journey, so again, this is not all positive, but I'll tell you the sort of the not so great side up to the good side. So, go back a few years, we had the COVID pandemic and we were all affected by that, as we know. And, I was affected by it in many different ways. My husband was made redundant from the hospitality industry, so he took a hit there. And I took a hit in the way that I had a business at the time. It was sort of working in HR and recruitment, and I had to close that down to go back into work because my husband was made redundant. So we needed that extra cash injection, that sort of steadier income that you perhaps don't get with having your own business half the time. So that was quite difficult and challenging from a lot of perspectives. We had a mortgage and trying to keep a roof over your head and stuff like that, which again, in this climate, many listeners can probably relate to. So it was challenging, and it was also challenging in the way with COVID. The only place that I was allowed to go to at one point was the supermarket, and that was just sort of
Hmm.
mentally draining. I was the kind of person that if I wasn't working, I wanted to go and see my parents or go for a walk or go shopping or those little things that we sometimes take for granted we couldn't do anymore. So, besides going shopping, which was chaotic in itself because they were running out of toilet roll and everything else, I'd have a lot of time to reflect. And I am a big reflector. And again, that's in the INFJ personality. So I started getting the journal out. I started thinking about how I was feeling, what do I want for the next chapter in my life? What do I want when COVID's lifted? What do I want to do more of? And just stay sane in a difficult situation, and actually try and bring some positives back into the situation. So, like, after loads of conversations and journaling, like, me and my husband decided, well, when lockdown sort of finishes and we can get out there a bit more, we'd really like to travel. I've done bits of traveling in the past, and, I really want to get out there. There's a big world out there, and I just enjoy traveling. It's my thing. And my husband, whilst he'd done a little bit, he really wanted to get into that as well. So we're writing all this plan and really visualizing it, watching loads of YouTube videos of like Thailand and everything. And it just gave me sort of like a warm feeling in a not so positive time. Anyway, the plan was, start saving, have a bit of a maybe 5-year plan and get some money behind me to get going. But then unfortunately other events happened, and there's a bit of a trigger warning on this one. So me and my husband at the time were trying for a baby through IVF, and it did happen, but unfortunately it failed twice. So after the second time, I kind of hit a bit of a crossroads, and I was like, okay, I just need to make this travel happen now. Like, I could wait 5 years, but am I ever going to be truly happy in that time? Like, the universe or something is calling me to do something different, to go for happiness because of all these little things that were not going quite right. So me and the husband said, okay, well, we'll just leave our jobs now. We'll take what we've got and we'll just go, because there's never going to be a right time to do anything. You know, if you wait and put things off, the harder it is to get going. So we just sold everything and we just left and we just went traveling. So, you know, this travel journey has been, yeah, it's been a healing journey. You know, I'm not going to lie, it has been a healing journey. But it's also been a journey of growth as well. So I've had a chance to heal, think about self love, reflect on the past, make peace with a lot of the past as well. And yeah, just enjoy every moment and enjoy every day. Now, unfortunately, in this 2 year journey, I did lose my mum, and that was quite difficult as well. So I've had to kind of heal from that as well. You know, I've had to heal from one thing and then heal from another. But I think the healing from the first thing has really helped with the healing of losing my mother. Slightly different, but being on that journey of healing, you carry that healing journey on, if that makes sense. And, you know, whilst losing my mum hasn't been easy, if I see the positives in it, it makes me realise just how short life is. And it makes me want to embrace it every day. And, you know, when I do sometimes feel stress and procrastination, because I am still human, those, you know, difficult days still occur, I've got the strength and resilience and the mental toolkit, if you will, to deal with it. And yeah, that's kind of the journey. And in terms of when I realised when I wanted to be a coach, was when I was in HR. There's like a strand of coaching, if you will. It's not like formal coaching, but it's like coaching and guiding managers, you know, and empowering them to make decisions for themselves. But also sort of coaching employees sometimes to enable them to do their jobs effectively and, you know, get new jobs if they needed to sort of shift jobs in the organisation for whatever reason. So that was a strand of HR that I really liked. You know, I wasn't necessarily keen on the darker side of HR where, you know, people have got to be made redundant and stuff like that. So that's sort of where the passion started. And then after being in a couple of coaching jobs after that, I realised that I wanted to go and travel the world and have my own coaching business, because travelling the world and working for an employer don't quite go hand in hand, because, you know, they'll give you like 28 days holiday or something and you're traveling and don't know where you're going to be from one day to the next. So it wasn't kind of in parallel, if you will. So I knew I had to start my own business. But what's good about that is I can take the lessons that I've learned from other coaching jobs and I can give, you know, the best coaching to the best of my ability in a really authentic way, where I show up on my time frame when I'm the best for the people that I serve. Because one of the things I've noticed in the past when I was coaching for other employers is, you know, sometimes it would be quantity over quality. Yeah, so I've taken all the lessons from the coaching realm, if you will, from other jobs and just tried to apply it, because I realised that, you know, showing up and giving myself the best version of myself to even fewer people, I would rather do than coach hundreds or thousands of people in one go. You know, quality is important in the coaching world. If you turn up and you're not your best self, people can sense that. Like, people don't need to be a
Hmm.
genius to work out whether you've had 7 hours sleep or you've gone from one coaching call to the next and just, you know, rinse and repeat. So for me, I would rather work with a smaller number of people and give them all of me, you know, so they can change themselves. So yeah, it's taking all these little lessons from past roles and going, this is what I'm going to do and this is what I'm going to create, you know. So that's kind of my journey.
I see that you have been through many challenging situations in your life up till here. And what's really beautiful is like you have taken a step to, you know, go past those challenges or those situations that you were in. Healing oneself is very, very important, to not carry that baggage of trauma or whatever that remains in your heart and head, because taking that along as you are living, it starts getting even more heavier. And I just want to kind of thank you, and because you being so open and honest, that makes us, even our listeners, kind of open up a little bit of that resistance in our head. Many times when we listen to a podcast or we listen or watch any movie, we still have that resistance to, not being able to kind of understand, relate, or resonate with someone who's listening. We're just there to kind of, take away the highlights or the important things that can help us. But opening yourself up in this way can really help people actually relax, take a breath, and sit there and just listen, and then really grasp what's happening and really kind of imbibe those, you know maybe the steps that you have taken, so that it can help them, and also make them feel that it's okay. There has been so many things that are happening in the world to like so many other people, and if they can still do it, I must take one step for my own happiness and health. So, thank you so much, Katie, for opening up to us. I think you have made this conversation so beautiful by, sharing something very deep rooted in your heart. And I would love to just send good wishes, and God blesses you with everything that you are actually working towards. And I'm sure it is that you are feeling that abundance, and you will going on, because you have really come from the point of view like why you want to do something. You even analyze the kind of coach that you are, and you are very specific, and you're very sure of whom you want to coach and how you want to do things. That has been figured out, but you have figured it out, but the journey to actually figure that out is what is so important. And that's what this whole podcast is all about, understanding the behind the steps of taking your first step. So thank you so much, Katie, for being on my first step ever. To wrap up this episode, I like to kind of I always ask my guest speakers to leave our listeners with a quote or a saying that they really resonate with.
So, in terms of a quote, this is one that kind of ties in with my coaching journey, if you will. It's sort of tied in with the coaching world. But if you do the same things that you've always done, you'll get the same results. Now, in terms of where that quote has come from, it's kind of speculated to come from Tony Robbins and various other sources. But it's true, if you do the same thing, you're going to get the same results. Now, granted, there might be slight variations of that. But again, this entire podcast is about me saying to you, I've had to kind of learn from these lessons eventually. Like I've been forced one way or another to reflect and change. It might have taken several times for, self confidence and love, but I've eventually got there in the end and had to kind of learn those lessons and had to not make the same mistakes again, to kind of work on myself and do that inner work. Eventually, you are going to have to do it, but the results can be amazing when you do. So, it's all about taking little steps, really. Life is a journey at the end of the day. And, you're not always going to get things right the first time, but just keep going is what I would say. And if anybody, is struggling with anything at the moment, especially like procrastination or time management, I do have an ebook and I've shared that with you. So, by all means, pass on the link. They get a free ebook and, have a fantastic feedback so far. And, that one thing could probably change your life, but just take it in little steps would be my advice. Don't do everything in one go because you'll just end up getting overwhelmed and frustrated. So little steps, little things every day, reflect often, and give yourself a pat on the back and a reward from time to time.
And for everyone who's still tuned to this particular episode, I'm sure you're really hooked on and you want to kind of learn a bit more about your getting out of your own procrastination and managing your time well. And thank you, Katie, for sharing that free ebook. I will be leaving all the links in the show notes. And if you would like to kind of follow Katie and learn more about her, even that would be there in the show notes. So do follow. So thank you so much, Katie, for being on my first step ever. And to all my listeners out there, I would really like to say this again and again whenever I get an opportunity, that start believing in yourself and keep believing in yourself.